Hey everybody, today we are going to talk about the Social Security cost of living adjustment because we just got some new data that tells us a better idea of what is going to happen in 2025. Before we dive into the latest numbers, please take a minute and check out the link you see on your screen. It's a message from my sponsor, The Motley Fool. It's the best way to support this work I'm doing on YouTube. Again, fool.com/Frankel. So let's dive right in. I'm going to share my screen real quick. So we just got new inflation data from August. Every month, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports the previous month's inflation data, and we just saw August. So in August, the CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, increased by 2.5% over the past 12-month period. That is down significantly from a 2.9% inflation rate in July. So that is the headline, the overall Consumer Price Index data. Social Security's cost of living adjustments use a subset of that data known as the CPIW, or the CPI for urban wage earners and clerical workers. Now, there is a CPI index specifically designed for the elderly called the CPI-E, and unfortunately that's not what is being used. I've talked about that in other videos, that probably should be the preferred inflation metric. But here we are, and this is what the Social Security Administration actually uses for the time being. So far, we've gotten the CPIW data for July and August. So in August, the CPIW was up 2.4% compared to a year ago. In July, it was 2.9% greater than a year ago. And that is significant because the Social Security cost of living adjustment each year is based on the third quarter's CPIW data. So essentially what they do is they'll compare this year's third quarter data to last year's. So once we know what the CPIW is in September, the month we're in right now, we will know definitively what the cost of living adjustment will be. So right now, there are two possible outcomes. So specifically, kind of to expand on what I just said, the cost of living adjustment is determined by comparing the average CPIW from the third quarter of 2024 with the third quarter of 2023. So essentially what that means is they'll take the three numbers. The CPI is an index. It's not just a percentage. There's an index. For this past month, it was 308.640. Not that that matters at all to you. But what they will do is they will add the 3 monthly numbers up. They'll add the 3 monthly numbers up from 2023 and divide the two. That's how they determine what inflation was for the third quarter. So based on what we know so far, the most likely outcomes are a cost of living adjustment of either 2.5% or 2.6%. The most recent estimates, 2 months ago, the estimate was 2.63%. Last month, the estimate was 2.57%. The actual cost of living adjustment will be to 1 decimal point. So that's also worth noting. If inflation comes out to 2.62%, then it would just be 2.6. They would round to the nearest tenth of a percentage. So here's just a kind of a list of the previous ones, just so you can see what I'm talking about. All of these are to 1 decimal place. Last year was 3.2%. The year before that was 8.7%, which was the longest in a while, and so on and so on. If there is no inflation, or if there is deflation, the cost of living adjustment will be zero. Like you can see here in 2015, there was no cost of living adjustment because there was no inflation. Now, the cost of living adjustment can never go negative if we have a deflationary year. It can only be zero until we see further inflation. Zeros are not unheard of. They've happened before. I cut it off on this chart, but around the time of the financial crisis, there was also a 0 or 2 in there. So this is just recent history. So a 2.5 or 2.6 would be the lowest cost of living adjustment since 2020. So it all comes down to September. So I'll spare you the math. I did the calculation separately before I recorded this. So what it works out to is if September's CPIW data increases by more than 2.43%, that's kind of the precise amount. If it's more than that, the cost of living adjustment will be 2.6%. If September's CPIW increase is less than 2.43%, it will be 2.5%. So that's why I say those are kind of the two possible scenarios right now. Of course, there is the possibility that we can get a big surprise either to the upside or downside. It's unlikely that inflation would be that high that it would be outside of these two numbers, though. Anything but a 2.5 or 2.6 would be a big surprise at this point. So here's what this means to you. Depending on what type of benefit you get, if you're a retired worker, if you are a survivor that is getting money off somebody else's work record who's no longer with us, if you're a spouse that gets money off of your spouse's work record, these are the current averages for August 2024, which is the latest numbers we have. If there's a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, here's what you can expect. Retired workers would get $1,968.49 on average. Again, that's the average. A lot of people get higher or lower than that. And here's what it would be with a 2.6%. That would be $1,970.41. So the good news is that whichever one it is, there's not much difference between them. Even for retired workers right here, the difference between a 2.5 and 2.6% cost of living adjustment is roughly $2 a month. And it's even less for people with survivor's benefits and with spousal benefits. Now, whether or not that's enough to really keep up with the true costs of living, that's another topic for another video. That gets into the other CPI, the CPI for the elderly, which isn't currently used. But this is where things stand right now. So if you can kind of apply that to whatever benefit you're getting right now if you're a Social Security recipient to see what the possible outcomes would be. So I will be sure to do another video in October. We are going to get the data. Let me see if I right here. So we already got the August CPI data. That's that first line that was released September 11th at 8:30 in the morning. September CPI data is expected on October 10th, also at 8:30 Eastern Time in the morning. And immediately after that, we will know what the actual 2025 cost of living adjustment is. It might be a little bit of a delay till the Social Security Administration formally announces what it's going to be. But just based on what is in that news release from the BLS, we will know exactly what the cost of living adjustment will be. So I'll be sure to do another video at that time to let you know for sure exactly what's happening with your 2025 Social Security benefits. So please click subscribe to my channel if you don't already to keep up with that and all of my other content. And thanks for watching. I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. The Motley Fool is a company that provides investing insight and stock recommendations for investors of all skill sets and risk levels. You all know how much I love researching new stocks and trying to find the next best investment. So I'm proud to partner with The Motley Fool to bring you 10 stock picks from the popular product Stock Advisor. Stock Advisor has beaten the market by nearly 5 times. So go to fool.com/Frankel to get your 10 stock picks now. The Motley Fool Stock Advisor returns are 767% as of July 5th, 2024, and are measured against the S&P 500 returns of 163% as of July 5th, 2024.